Imagine this. You're standing in your kitchen at 7:14 a.m., sipping black coffee, scrolling through a boring HOA bulletin on your phone. Then suddenly, bang, bang, bang. Not a knock. Not even an aggressive one. 3 hard pounds on the door like someone wants it broken in. I set the cup down and checked the front camera feed. 2 men, black tactical boots, dark pants, matching polos with enforcement printed across the back in bold white letters. One had a radio clipped to his shoulder, the other holding what looked like a citation book. But here's the thing. No badges, no IDs, no name tags, and something about the way they stood, too square, too stiff, too performative. Like they'd watched how real cops move on TV and were trying to mimic it. I didn't open the door right away. I kept watching. One of them looked right at the camera and said, loud and rehearsed, "Sir, we're with the HOA Enforcement Division. We need to speak with you immediately regarding multiple violations." I didn't say anything. Just opened the notes app on my phone and wrote one word, "Showtime." Because what they didn't know, they weren't the first fake officers I dealt with, and they sure as hell weren't the smartest. Let me rewind. My name's Eric. I've lived in the Ridgegate community for just over 5 years. Clean neighborhood, family-friendly, pretty chill until recently. I work long hours. My neighbors know I'm some kind of federal agent, but no one asks questions. I keep to myself. No parties, no noise complaints, no problems. But that all changed about a month ago when my garage project finally hit the driveway. My nephew had been staying with me for the summer. 17, smart kid, into robotics, coding, all that stuff. Built this small electric cart in my garage, kind of a prototype for his school project. Safe, lightweight, low speed. He wanted to test it out on the street. I said sure. That was the moment the HOA decided I was suddenly a problem. 2 days after that test drive, I got a notice taped to my door. Unauthorized use of non-standard recreational vehicle on public access neighborhood roads. Potential safety concern. HOA warning issued. Next step, formal compliance action. I laughed, thought it was a joke. Then came the noise complaint. Then the unsecured equipment notice, because the cart was parked inside my own garage with the door cracked open. Then the fine, $175. That was the moment I knew it wasn't a warning. It was a message. The HOA board president is a woman named Marilyn Duke. She's the kind of person who introduces herself with a title, the kind of person who sees her HOA role as a badge, the kind of person who thinks power and authority are the same thing. We'd had exactly one conversation before this, 2 years ago. She caught me pressure washing my driveway at 6:30 a.m. on a Saturday. She didn't say hello, she said, "This is a noise-sensitive community. We like to respect quiet hours." I said, "Then maybe don't stand in the splash zone." She didn't forget, and apparently she didn't forgive either. Back to that morning. The 2 enforcement officers were still outside. I finally opened the door, keeping the chain latch on. "Can I help you?" The tall one, clipboard guy, spoke up. "You've been cited for multiple non-compliance issues. We've been authorized by the HOA to issue an in-person warning and conduct a brief property check." I stared at him. "No ID, no badge, not even a lanyard. You from the city?" "No, sir, we're community enforcement." "Which department?" "We're contracted." "Contracted through what agency?" The shorter guy shifted on his feet, got nervous. "Through Ridgegate Residential Management." I paused, then smiled. Because that name, it doesn't exist. I stepped back, undid the latch, and opened the door fully. They looked me up and down, just a guy in joggers, t-shirt, and house slippers. But clipped to my waistband, DEA credentials, visible, intentional. That's when the short one's face dropped just a little, not enough to run, but enough to know they were in over their heads. "You said you want to do a compliance check." I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and folded my arms. "Go ahead, I'll follow." The tall one hesitated. We just need to inspect for external violations. We don't need you to escort." "Oh no, I insist. Let's make it official." They walked the edge of my yard like middle schoolers pretending to do security patrol, pointed at a flower pot, took a picture of a hose, whispered to each other near the curb, and then clipboard guy said, "You may receive a follow-up letter." I nodded. "You may receive one too." They stopped walking. "Excuse me. Impersonating a government official's a felony, just so you know. So is trespassing under false authority." The short one said, "We're not impersonating anyone. We're with the HOA." "No, you're not. The HOA doesn't have police powers, they can issue fines. They can't conduct inspections without notice, and they sure as hell can't send people to act like officers. Then I pointed at the camera on my porch. You're on tape. I'm filing this with the county. They turned and left without another word, but they walked faster this time. I thought that would be the end of it, but that was just the beginning, because what I didn't know, those two guys, they weren't just some overzealous rule enforcers. They were step one in something a lot bigger, and the next time they showed up, they didn't knock. They came with more people, and that time they brought backup. Well, before we dive in, if you're enjoying this story and love real-life HOA drama, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber keeps me motivated to dig deeper, uncover more wild stories, and bring you even crazier content. Your support means everything. It's what keeps this channel going strong. And trust me, there's plenty more chaos coming your way. Back to the story. 3 days after the first visit, I was coming back from a morning run when I spotted something off. A black SUV, unmarked, parked 2 houses down, tinted windows, engine running. Nothing illegal about it, but something about the way it sat there rubbed me wrong. I slowed down, wiped the sweat from my face, and casually walked past it. That's when I saw him, clipboard guy from before, sitting in the passenger seat pretending not to see me. I didn't stop. I just kept walking and thought to myself, so this is surveillance now. An hour later, my neighbor called, older guy named Henry, retired firefighter, keeps to himself, doesn't like drama. He said, "Hey, some guys just came to my door, asked about you, said they were checking on a safety complaint. Said you might be operating something dangerous out of your garage." I froze. Did they show ID? Nope, just said they were with the HOA. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about citations anymore. They were building a case, a fake one. I didn't wait. I logged into the HOA portal and started digging. Found a new section that had been added under security oversight, with 0 board vote or resident notice. It read, HOA compliance support team is authorized to conduct real-time community assessments as needed. Residents are expected to comply with all investigations. Investigations, since when does an HOA conduct investigations? I searched the document metadata, last edited, Marilyn Duke. I called the HOA office, no answer, called again, voicemail. Then I went to their building in person. Guess what I found? Locked doors. A paper sign on the window said, due to recent safety concerns, the office is operating remotely. Please email your inquiries. Safety concerns, right? More like damage control. They knew they were walking a fine legal line. They just didn't think anyone would call them on it. That night, at 9:02 p.m., it happened again. Another knock. 3 men this time, 2 in the same black polos. One in what looked like a tactical vest, all of them wearing radios and earpieces like they were prepping for a breach. And this time, they didn't stand on the porch. They stood in the yard, flashlights pointed at my garage window. I opened the front door, calm but direct. "You're back." Clipboard guy was there again. He cleared his throat. "Sir, we've received reports of suspicious activity in your garage. You've been uncooperative with compliance efforts. This is your final warning." I crossed my arms. Final warning for what? Obstruction. Of what? An active safety assessment. Let me guess. Authorized by the HOA. He didn't respond. Instead, the guy in the vest stepped forward. Bigger, bulkier, clearly the muscle. "You can either cooperate now or deal with the escalation process." I stepped down from the porch, didn't raise my voice, didn't posture. I just looked him in the eye and said, "Let me ask you something." "What's that?" "You ever walk into a federal facility and bluff your way into the lab?" He squinted. "What?" I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my credentials and flipped them open. Drug Enforcement Administration. Badge, supervisor status, active. The big guy took half a step back. Clipboard guy turned pale. "You just tried to intimidate a federal agent on his own property, using a fake title and a made-up violation. We weren't told." "No, you weren't. Because someone at the top thought they could bully people into compliance before anyone pushed back." I stepped closer. "You're all on camera. You're all being documented, and I promise you, your names will be part of the report." They didn't say another word. They just turned and left. But the guy in the vest, he turned back just before getting in the SUV and said, "You think your title scares us?" I smiled. "No, but the charges you're walking into should." That was the night I went into full-on case-building mode. I printed everything. HOA documents, citations, security, policy, screenshots, neighbor witness statements, video clips from the front cam, the surveillance car footage. I created a file labeled Ridgegate Operation Fraud and Impersonation, and I emailed it to one person, my contact at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Subject line: Illegal Security Ops HOA Front. Possible impersonation of law enforcement. Attached, 19 pieces of evidence. That same night, I got an automatic reply: received. Will be in contact. The next day, someone tried to break into my mailbox. Didn't succeed. But the lock was scratched, and a single folded piece of paper was wedged into the slit. No envelope. No stamp inside, typed in capital letters. Stop pushing. Drop IT. That's when it stopped being annoying. It became personal. They weren't just trying to fake citations now. They were trying to scare me into silence. Wrong target. I called an emergency meeting with a few of the neighbors I trusted. We met in my garage. Closed doors. No phones. I laid it all out, told them about the surveillance, the fake citations, the attempted intimidation, and what I got back. More stories. One mom said a compliance officer showed up while her daughter was chalking on the sidewalk. A retired vet said someone tried to question him about his service dog's breed. Another neighbor said they got a $400 fine for vegetation misalignment. None of it was legal. None of it was enforceable. It was all just pressure. And now they knew it. But I told them something else too, something I hadn't mentioned yet. This wasn't just Karen being power hungry. This whole setup, the fake patrols, the intimidation, the coordination, it's too structured. They all went quiet. I continued. This looks more like a test run, a beta version of something bigger. And I wasn't wrong, because the next day I found out this exact compliance team model was being sold to other HOA boards by a company with no address. A company that only existed online, and the signature on the rollout form, Marilyn Duke. She wasn't just making threats, she was building a racket, and it was time to shut it down. But first, I needed to bait her into going one step too far, and that moment, it came faster than I expected. I knew Marilyn was cornered, and cornered people. They do dumb things. She had escalated from phony citations to sending wannabe tactical goons onto private property, and now she was trying to intimidate me through anonymous threats. It wasn't just reckless, it was desperate. Which meant the next move would be loud, so I gave her a reason to make it. 2 days later, I started working in my driveway, not inside my garage, not out back, right in the open. I set up a workbench, pulled out a few boxes of gear, put some plastic tubs out labeled storage unit reorg. Looked innocent, looked busy, but what she saw, activity, movement, something to complain about, and it didn't take long. That afternoon, I spotted clipboard guy again, walking with a new partner, another dude in the same black HOA enforcement polo, acting like he was casing the neighborhood. They didn't come to my door this time. They went to the HOA message board. A post appeared hours later. Resident at 1152 Maple Court is actively working with unpermitted equipment. Possible chemical storage concern. We've attempted contact with no response. Chemical storage. They were playing the drug card. That's how bold Marilyn had gotten. She didn't just want me gone. She wanted to smear me. Funny thing is, she had no clue who she was smearing. I let the post sit there. Didn't reply. Next day, same post. Then a compliance notice appeared on my garage door. This time it was printed, glossy HOA letterhead. It said, due to failure to comply with Ridgegate HOA investigative measures and suspected activity in violation of community health standards, you are hereby instructed to cease all unauthorized use of equipment and submit to an interior inspection within 48 hours. I stared at it. No signature, no inspection warrant, no citation code, just threats. It was exactly what I needed. That night, I wrote my reply, not in the portal, not in email, publicly. I printed it, posted it next to their notice. Large font, clear. I am a federal agent. I do not store narcotics. I do not run illegal operations, and I do not respond to threats. The next unauthorized attempt to enter my property will be treated as a criminal act. I signed it, Eric M., DEA Supervisor, badge #XXXX, no ambiguity, no bluff. I left my porch light on all night and waited. What happened next, it wasn't subtle. It was a full-on fake raid. 8:41 p.m. the next evening. I was inside watching TV when I saw lights sweep across my living room window. Blue, red, white, but not real police lights, cheap LED strobes mounted to a vehicle grille. I looked through the peephole. 4 men, 3 in black polos. One wearing a chest rig like a tactical vest, face covered in a balaclava, no badges, no name tags, no cruisers, just flashlights, radios, and way too much fake confidence. I hit record on my door camera and opened the door halfway. One of them shouted, "We need you to step outside. We're conducting a compliance search." I said nothing, just let him talk. "We've had multiple reports of illegal activity. If you don't comply, we'll be forced to escalate this to HOA legal." I smiled, calm, almost bored. "That's cute." The one with the vest stepped forward. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to exit the house." That's when I opened the door fully. I was wearing jeans, a DEA field jacket, and my badge around my neck. They froze. One actually took a full step back. "You're impersonating law enforcement on federal property," I said. "This isn't federal property," one of them muttered. "My credentials say otherwise." They looked at each other, unsure. I raised my phone, still recording. "You're on video. You're in uniform. You're attempting a forced inspection with no authority. That's felony impersonation and trespassing." Clipboard guy's voice cracked. We thought this was a community issue. It's about to be a court issue." I took a step forward. They scattered like pigeons. I called it in. Not to local PD, not to the HOA, to the Department of Justice Office of Professional Responsibility. Within the hour, a contact of mine at the U.S. Attorney's Office had looped in the county sheriff, who confirmed this wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. It was organized impersonation of law enforcement by a private party, and the fake cops, they were caught on camera doing it. That gave me leverage. But what dropped the hammer was the 5th guy. One of the impersonators that night wasn't new. He was already on probation for impersonating security at a private event 2 years earlier. I submitted a facial match with archived records, confirmed by the sheriff's department. Once that got flagged, everything unraveled. The next day, I was called to an official HOA board meeting. Except this time, it wasn't inside their cozy little clubhouse. It was in the sheriff's annex building, and Marilyn, she walked in looking like she'd aged 5 years in one night, still trying to look in control, clipboard in hand, hair tight, neutral expression. But this time, she wasn't the one calling the meeting. She was the one being questioned. They played the footage. The fake patrols, the intimidation, the bogus citations, the phony raid. And then, they showed the signature, the form used to authorize the creation of the HOA compliance team. Signed by Marilyn Duke, and the account used to pay the so-called officers, traced back to a private LLC. Guess who owned it? Her brother, when the sheriff turned to her and said, "Did you authorize the hiring of unlicensed security to pose as enforcement officers?" She said, "I was protecting the neighborhood," he replied. By creating a fake police force, she didn't answer, but her silence was an answer. She was escorted out of the meeting room, not in cuffs, not yet, but she was done, at least in Ridgegate. But what she didn't know, she hadn't just broken HOA bylaws. She'd tripped a federal wire. And what happened next, even I didn't expect. 3 days after the sheriff's meeting, the HOA community forum exploded. Someone had leaked screenshots from the board's investigation files, mostly redacted, but clear enough to confirm what everyone suspected. The compliance team wasn't real. The patrols were unauthorized, and Marilyn Duke had signed off on every single one. That afternoon, someone posted a new thread titled, "The Fake Police Our HOA Paid For." It included 3 doorbell cam clips, 1 financial receipt showing $3,000 labeled Resident Enforcement Reimbursement, and a quote from the sheriff's report. Within 4 hours, the post had over 150 replies, and none of them were defending Marilyn. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop. Neighbors who'd never spoken to me before were now asking questions, apologizing, offering support. A dad from 2 streets over told me he was fined $350 for letting his kids set up a lemonade stand. A woman said she was cited for unauthorized foliage height. One message hit harder than the rest. I didn't know who to talk to. I thought I was losing my mind. "Thank you for standing up." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about a fake citation. This was about a neighborhood held hostage by someone who wore authority like a weapon. The next day, I received a certified letter at my office. return address, county legal affairs. Inside was a formal case number. Marilyn Duke had officially been charged with impersonating law enforcement, misuse of HOA funds, harassment, and conspiracy to commit fraud, 4 felonies, 2 misdemeanors, trial pending. The best part, she wasn't the only one listed. 2 of her officers were also named, clipboard guy and the dude in the tactical vest. Turns out one had a record, the other had been paid under the table for consulting, and the money came directly from unauthorized HOA budget reallocations. I didn't speak to Marilyn again after that. But she tried to reach me, 3 calls, 2 voicemails. The last one just said, "You don't understand what you've done. You've ruined everything." No, Marilyn, you did. The next week, the HOA held a public emergency vote, the agenda. Immediate removal of Marilyn from the board, temporary freeze on all fines and enforcement actions, community-led oversight committee election. I went, not to talk, just to listen. The clubhouse was packed. Standing room only. When her name was announced, there was no debate, no back and forth. Just a straight vote, unanimous, she was out. And the second her name was stripped from the board listing, the entire room applauded, not loud, not wild, just long, heavy, relieved, like the neighborhood had finally exhaled. But that wasn't the real ending, not yet. Because the DOJ called me later that week, an official from the Fraud and Public Corruption Task Force. She said, "We've identified similar enforcement setups in 6 other HOA communities in state. We believe they're using the same playbook, same false patrol structure, same financial funnel." And guess who had helped them get started? Yep, Marilyn, through compliance consulting. Turns out she wasn't just abusing power, she was selling it. The agent asked me to testify, not just against her, but in support of a broader investigation. I said yes without hesitation. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about setting a precedent. Back in Ridgegate, things calmed down faster than anyone expected. No more fake patrols. No more compliance warnings. No more silent cars parked down the street. Just quiet, the good kind. Families started putting up decorations again. One guy repainted his garage door bright blue, said, "Let's see if anyone tries to stop me now." Nobody did. The HOA portal got cleaned up, new leadership, real transparency, and me, I went back to my routine. No more cameras angled at the driveway. No more folders on the kitchen table. But I didn't let my guard down completely, because I knew the kind of people who do what Marilyn did. They don't always disappear. Sometimes they regroup. One morning, I was in the garage when my nephew stopped by. Same kid who built the little go-kart that triggered this whole mess. He looked around and said, "So neighborhood's back to normal?" I nodded, as close as it's ever gonna get. He looked thoughtful, then smirked. "I still think about that raid." "Which one?" "The one with the guy in the vest. The way you opened the door and just stood there, like you were waiting for them to screw up." I smiled. "I was," he laughed. "They really had no idea who they were messing with." "That's the problem," I said. "Too many people think a badge makes them right. Real power's knowing the law, not faking it." Later that night, I got a message from the DOJ agent. They'd arrested another HOA president, different city, same setup, fake enforcement team, unauthorized fines, same vendor funneling money. She wrote, "We think we've uncovered the tip of something big. You started something. Just thought you'd want to know." I stood on my porch that night, same place where it all started, where they stood pretending to be what they weren't. Now no strobe lights, no flashlights in my window. Just a street light, some crickets, peace. But I knew that peace existed for one reason, because I didn't stay quiet, because I called it what it was, fake power, real consequences, and the best part, we'd only just begun. The courtroom didn't look like justice, beige walls, squeaky chairs. A judge who'd probably rather be playing golf. But it didn't have to look like justice, it just had to hold the truth. And Marilyn, she sat at the defense table like none of it touched her, hair pulled tight, blazer 2 sizes too expensive, face blank but her eyes, they moved fast, nervous. Searching for an exit. There wasn't one, not anymore. The charges were read out loud. Impersonating law enforcement, misuse of HOA funds, conspiracy to defraud residents, criminal intimidation. The prosecutor laid it out clean. A step-by-step breakdown of how Marilyn created a fake compliance team, authorized patrols without a vote, paid unlicensed men to pose as officers, and directed them to threaten residents into submission they showed. Footage from my front porch, images of fake uniforms, payment records tied to her. Brothers LLC HOA documents edited without approval, screenshots from community forums, and the handwritten threat I found stuffed in my mailbox. Then the prosecutor said something that hit the room like a brick. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a campaign. A coordinated effort to create fear and control in a place where people were supposed to feel safe. They asked me to testify. I didn't give a speech. I just told the truth. I've served in the DEA for 14 years. I've worked operations in 3 states. I know the difference between enforcement and intimidation. What Marilyn did wasn't about safety. It was about dominance. She created a fake chain of command and used it to punish people who didn't fall in line. And when I stepped down, Marilyn looked up at me for the first time since this all began. Her face didn't move, but her eyes, they burned. Then it was time for her defense. Her attorney called it a misstep in leadership. Said she didn't fully understand the legal boundaries of HOA authority. Said she believed she was protecting the community. The judge didn't buy a word of it. When he handed down the sentence, his voice was cold, flat, final. You abused a position of power. You orchestrated the impersonation of law enforcement. You harassed residents. You misappropriated funds. And worst of all, you did it under the pretense of service. That's not leadership. That's manipulation. The sentence: 18 months probation, 1 year of supervised community service, $25,000 in restitution to Ridgegate HOA, lifetime ban from HOA leadership roles, and an official letter of apology to be mailed to every household. She finds she didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stood, took the paperwork, and walked out with her lawyer like a ghost in heels. But the moment she stepped outside the courthouse, she met a wall of cameras, local news, community members, even a few people from the neighborhood holding signs. We're not your experiment. Power doesn't mean permission. No more fake cops. And the best part, nobody came to her defense. Back in Ridgegate, everything changed, not overnight, but slowly, permanently. The new HOA leadership published full budget transparency reports. All patrol activities were banned without third-party certification, and any future compliance action now required 2 board signatures and video documentation. The place was calm, real calm, the kind you notice after a storm finally passes. A few weeks later, I was walking the block when I saw something taped to a lamppost, a flyer, not a warning, not a citation, just a sketch: 2 men in black polos holding flashlights standing outside a house. Caption at the bottom: "Don't knock unless you're real." I laughed. Whoever made it, they understood. But even after everything, the work wasn't done. I got a call from the DOJ again, the agent who'd looped me in months ago. She said, 3 more HOA communities, same scheme, different names, same tactics. We've launched an interstate task force. She asked me if I'd be willing to consult, help them train other agents on how to spot these fake enforcement systems before they get out of hand. You lived it, she said. Most people wouldn't have caught it early enough. I thought about it for a second. Then said, let's make sure I'm the last one who has to. That night I stood in my driveway, no lights flashing across my windows, no men with fake badges, just a quiet street, a breeze, the faint sound of someone's sprinkler kicking on, and inside, my badge resting on the counter. Not because I needed it on me, because now they know. I wasn't the guy they could bully. I was the line they couldn't cross. And next time someone in an HOA thinks they can use fear to control their neighbors, they'll remember what happened here. Because one thing's for sure, fake cops don't scare me, but real justice, that scares them.